Hello and welcome to OverShadow ShadowCast with your host Thomas Anderson. Moi. Abigail unfortunately isn't here this week, it's just me. She's otherwise indisposed. As a result, I've done away with what we've been playing because I've just been playing the same little things, a couple of matches on this, couple of matches on that. Nothing that big at the moment, nothing new, nothing story-wise to tell anyone. So because it's just me, I'm going to go straight into the news. And unlike last time when it was just me, this isn't just Bethesda news to try to get past those particular rules that she puts in place. So the first piece we've got is a news story about Fortnite. Two little sections to this. Fortnite is going to be updated to allow players to see inside of their purchasable loot boxes before the players actually purchase them. They're going to be transparent, essentially. They're called llamas in this game, and they're going to be transparent, so people only buy them if they like what's inside, and then every now and again they get refreshed. I think that's coming because of the huge backlash at the moment that loot boxes are going through. So they've tried to, this doesn't affect the llamas or boxes that you pick up during gameplay or you earn for other reasons, but the ones you purchase are see-through, so that nobody's buying something they don't want, essentially. And I think it's a result of the backlash being caused by Star Wars Battlefront 2, which is still ongoing. This actually comes after the second piece of Fortnite news, which is that they have removed some of the dances from their game because they were posing some legal issues. I think they were being sued for some of the dances they were putting in. Two of the dances they've removed are the Floss and the Carlton. I think this is done. The dances have been removed so that if they lose that court case, they don't owe quite as much. And I think that's also the reason that the loot boxes have been made see-through, transparent, so that they can cover themselves once the world decides what it's going to do about loot boxes. Because this way they either covered if there's any retrospective repercussions, but also they can say, well, we were ahead of the curve and we've already taken out blind loot boxes. So it's not actually a loot box anymore because you can see what's inside it, so it's basically just buying an item, or if it's several items, a selection of items, but you know what they are. There's not much else to say other than that. That's what my feeling is on the issue. That's what my insight is that I think this is being done so that they can say they're ahead of the curve, but also to legally cover themselves, depending on decisions that are forthcoming. So that's a small piece, so we'll move on to a second piece of news. This is much larger, and this happened a little while ago. This is actually a news story that was on Kotaku back on the 11th of January. I think it was Jason Schreier that wrote this one. Former Gearbox lawyer accuses the CEO Randy Pitchford of taking a secret $12 million bonus in a lawsuit Gearbox calls absurd, Kotaku reports. Now, originally Gearbox sued Wade Callender, that's the former lawyer in question. He was in service between 2010 and 2018 for fraud. He's being sued for fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. They allege that he didn't fully pay back a loan for a home and tuition, and used private access of a company card, a credit card, for personal purchases, including gun lessons and a six-pack. Now that's not of beer or Coke, that's for his abs. He bought really amazingly ripped abs. I don't know how you allege that, because they haven't alleged he purchased something to get, or maybe this is the way it's just being reported by some people. I've heard they saying that he's being accused of buying a personal purchase, which is a sick abs was the quote I heard. I don't like to use that phrase. We're going to go with ripped. And I found that funny. He's using a privileged access of a company card, if this is true, to buy himself abs. But what's funnier is if it's not true, who came up with that accusation? Because as I've said, I've not actually seen or heard this written as an explanation of he bought a something that gave him this, just that he bought these. So I'm very confused, unless he had a surgery to install them. I'm a bit confused there, but that's the part of this I find funny. It's some of these accusations. Some of the others aren't funny. Wade Callender, as I said before, the lawyer in question here, filed a countersuit against Gearbox for the bonus Pitchford allegedly received, which he claims was supposed to go to company bonuses and further development work for Borderlands. Wade Callender also alleges that Pitchford left a USB stick in a restaurant in Dallas. I think it was a Medieval Times they had called them. Now that USB stick is alleged to have contained sensitive corporate data. The lawsuit states that the USB stick also contained Randy Pitchford's personal collection of underage pornography. You see, that's the part where, on one level, it's not funny anymore, unlike the six-pack, which is hilarious. But also it is funny in a way, because a lot of people who've been reporting this story that I've seen have burst out laughing at that part, because the whole thing is absolutely mental. It's two people just slinging dirt at each other, and then that ridiculously serious accusation comes out of absolutely nowhere. And it's just absolutely bewildering where that comes from. It's really sort of obtuse in a way and takes you by surprise. So I'm going to stand up for those people in that when that accusation, part of that accusation came out, I can completely understand why some people had that little momentary, oh no wait, seriously? And it's part of that is because it's so left field that you just don't see it coming. So I'm going to stand up for those people that did giggle at that. I can see why this story would make you laugh even though it's got that in it, because it gets really crazy at points. To continue, Wade alleges that the bonus money was used to fund parties for Pitchford. These parties were called peacock parties. They would fund parties for Pitchford and his wife, during which men exposed themselves to underage. I don't know if it was boys or girls. I've heard girls suggested, but I don't know if it was both. They exposed themselves to these underage persons for the amusement of Randy Pitchford. These parties were called peacock parties and involved private showings at the Peacock Theatre. So they had recordings, I think. There are recordings of what was shown, as in, it might have been a stage act, but there is a recording. So it could either be pre-recorded that was shown in this theatre, or something done live on stage that they in turn recorded, because they have offered to show the media these recordings in private viewings, so we may get more information in time. As part of an explanation for this, Gearbox have referenced a podcast released on the 22nd of December, the day after the lawsuit was filed, in which Pitchford told his version of the USB stick story. Pitchford stated that the material in question was barely legal camgirl content. I actually don't care. I don't know why he's stated, I don't really care what type it is, which he liked personally, so he copied it to the memory stick before he lost it. He claims that he took it to work out how she was doing something on the video. Now, I'll go into details. That's not a mature content reveal. I'll go into details later about what he meant. But I do have a question of, he's tried to use the excuse, and he'll use it later and you'll see what I mean. But he's tried to explain this away by saying that it wasn't he didn't like the content for adult reasons. But my question is, if it's camgirl content, how did he find it? You don't just come across that while looking for the sort of thing he says that he was interested in. So I would just keep this in mind, that he's said that he found it. Well, how? We'll continue though. Now, to clarify, to help explain some of his later assertions, the podcast in question was a magic podcast, and he is claiming that the girl in question was performing a magic trick, and he wants to work out how. He describes the girl as a magician. So there you go. He's claiming it's a magic trick, but she is naked doing adulty things during the magic trick. So how did he find that? Because it's not a stated magic trick. He's classed it as a magic trick because he can't understand it. And I'm not going to go into details about what she was doing, but how's he come across this? Because she doesn't describe herself as a magician. She's not doing what you would normally consider to be a magic trick. So how's he come across this? What's his explanation for that? If he's so desperate to explain all of it, why has he not explained that part? I just found that interesting. Pitchford himself is a magician, and he owns a magic magazine called Genii Magazine. The USB stick that he left in the restaurant was not secured, he says. It was from before they started password protecting their memory sticks and other files. Some kid then found it, took it home and read the company secrets and saw the other content. He says that they traded the USB for stuff from Gearbox. I think it was random paraphernalia as well as video games. However, you might think that's the story done, there you go, but no, Pitchford was on holiday at the time, so his executive assistant checked the contents for him and found the video in question. That assistant then showed everyone else. Why did the assistant show everybody else? If my personal assistant showed everybody else that, I'd fire them. So I don't understand that. That needs a bit more explanation for me. In fact, they might have been fired, we don't know. But why does he feel the need to explain all of this? That's what I don't understand. Nobody would have batted an eyelid at him saying, yeah, it's above legal age, so there's no problem there. I believe that the law in many countries, if the person is doing camera stuff and live camera stuff and they identify themselves as being above 18 or whatever the age is, you're covered because there's a reasonable expectation that that person is not lying. So he could have just said, yeah, it's absolutely fine, it's all above board, and it was just personal stuff for his own, and nobody would have batted an eyelid at that. So why he's having to explain this makes no sense, especially considering that he also explains what happens at... He denies that there are underage people at the Peacock parties, but he doesn't deny any adult content there. So why is he feeling the need to explain this one away like he's been caught by his mum? And yet he's then happily saying these other things. It doesn't quite add up. He continues and says, it never occurred to any of them, that's the employees that were seeing this video, that the reason why there was just that single porno was because of the magic trick. Later on in the interview, Pitchford then suggests putting this only 18 performer on the cover of a future Genii magazine issue. I'm not sure if that was done seriously or not. The only 18 tag was how she described herself, so that's his claim that she was stating she was above 18, and that's why I think legally he'd be covered if all that's true, so I don't know why he's had to explain it so much. A former Gearbox employee has on Twitter stated that the lying and con man stuff is true, but doesn't know about the pervy stuff. To clarify that, they simply stated, yep, it's true, and it had to come back and they put up check boxes to further explain it, and they had lying, conning, and then pervy, and they checked both the top two and left pervy blank because they didn't know. So I'm not entirely sure if that pervy stuff, according to that employee, includes the video, or if it's the underage part of the accusation that they're saying they don't know, or the weird stuff that's being described when it comes to the Peacock showings that they talk about. I'm not entirely sure. There needs to be more clarification on that as well, but this is that response also ties it all together. This is all tied into Calendar's countersuit. Resultantly, it will come up as they go through this. And the whole thing is a confused mess, but the accusation of money being shifted from game development to fund these events and similar things, that's why it's important to us as a gaming site, channel. But also, that's why we have to talk about the whole thing, is because if that's 12 million that should have gone to further game development and possibly bonuses for the workers and has been shifted to underage porn parties, I mean, it's bad enough if that money's just been shifted to his bank account. That's already seedy, that's already really bad, and we need to know that to decide whether or not to buy future Gearbox products. That's how capitalism is supposed to work. If you don't like the company, you don't buy their stuff. So we need to find out whether or not that money was shifted, but it is relevant to find out what it was shifted to, because the idea that people have bought a game and then had that game money shifted to something like this, which could involve underage performers, that leaves everybody feeling quite sick, that you've gone out and bought a game and you might have funded this by mistake. That's why I think this story is so relevant. So that's the whole story. I'll start to try and sum it up with my thoughts. It's quite difficult, it's quite a long one. I don't understand why he's felt the need to explain some of this away, but not other parts of it. That confuses me. I don't understand why his assistants looked at it and then shown everyone. That's a bit weird. But as I said, I don't understand why he's felt the need to explain parts of this and not others. It's very, very strange. It's like he's on the back foot trying to explain something which he could easily explain away by just giving the honest answer of, yeah, I like that, whatever. Nobody's going to judge him. It's not like 1952 or something. It's fine. But a bigger part is how this man hasn't lost his job, because he put personal content on a private USB stick and then he's lost the USB stick. I don't understand why he's got that content on a USB stick. Maybe that's a business thing, maybe it's an industry thing, so that he can look at it whenever he wants to, but he's not leaving it on computers left, right and centre, or trying to email it to people where it could be taken or end up in the wrong place. But the fact that he's lost that USB stick by taking it to a restaurant, he's put personal content on it, and he's not, I know he says they don't password protect their stuff, but the fact that they're suing Wade Callender for misuse of a company credit card, or privileged access of a company credit card. Why is he not being fired for misuse of a company USB stick? It seems very, very strange. On one hand, you'd think that if somebody saw underage content on that, they'd come down like a ton of bricks and it would all have been sorted a long time ago. But if people are frightened of their bosses and they weren't 100% sure, they might not do it. And he is the CEO. There's not many people above him. As well as his employees possibly being frightened of losing their jobs, frightened of him, all that sort of thing, blacklisted from the industry by accusing him of something like this when there's not that much evidence. Although you've also got to say that you'd think if that person had shown it around, that information would have come out. That number of employees, if they moved on to a secure position anywhere else, would have then said, hey, look, somebody needs to look into this, or would be now saying something. They may be worried about getting sued because they don't have any evidence themselves, but that's sort of the counter position of those. You'd think somebody would say something, but you could see why they would be too afraid. Although you think one person would take the risk, considering how serious this accusation is. But he could also just be making up that people saw it, and then saying that that's his defence. Well, loads of people saw it and didn't say anything. Well, they're not saying anything, so we don't really know if they saw it. And even that one person who commented on Twitter, they haven't actually answered the perfect question. They left that blank. So I hope absolutely nothing has happened, because that means children or underage people haven't been harmed, basically. But there needs to be a far deeper investigation into this now than just... It looks like apparently Pitchford and Callender were very friendly, so it looks like they've got on reasonably well, and then this is two people who used to work together who were friends, who've had to sue each other for different reasons, and it's got dirty and angry and mental really fast. Because this goes from the patently absurd to the that's really dark. And I think that considering the severity of the issue, and even the fact that 12 million being moved away from game funding to private expenses, gamers need to know that to know where their money's going when they buy these games. But if it's being moved towards something like that, gamers need to know it is a serious accusation, so it will have to be looked into. I obviously can't come down on either side or have any evidence here as to whether or not any of these accusations are true or not. All I can do is report on them. But I'd recommend that if you're thinking of getting a Gearbox game, I would definitely pay attention to this story to find out what happens, if you can, just so you know where your money's going. Because you don't want to find out in a year's time that you bought a game and some of that money went to this sort of activity if it does turn out to be some of these accusations are true. So we'll need to pay attention to it for that reason. But that's just really absurd and dark. And there is an interesting question of who has their own private theatre for invitation-only parties. It's just the weird contradiction of explaining some of it really weirdly and creepily and way too in-depth. Like, please believe me. But the rest of it he just says is fine, when they're really the same thing. That I don't understand. That's one part where I'm genuinely confused. But the rest of it we'll just have to leave and see what happens. But my recommendation is pay attention, and we will too, and hopefully we'll be able to tell you soon what's been happening. So moving on to the next piece of news that we've got, which hopefully everything gets less dark, but possibly, I was going to say more absurd, but no, it won't. It'll be less dark and less absurd, and hopefully better, but also not great. But for way less dark reasons. The co-writer of Star Wars Rogue One, Gary Whitta, who worked at PC Gamer previously, has said that if he was Disney and it was possible, he would take the license away from EA. It's been an embarrassment. They hired the native director of Uncharted and got surprised when the game she was making was similar to Uncharted. Then they cancelled it. So he said that they have to figure out what it is they want to do. EA and obviously Disney. These are paraphrases, not direct quotes. There have been a smattering of reports coming through, a lot from Jason Schreier again, of EA executives being hyper-focused on Jedi and the Force because of market analysis that says that those things do very well, that people associate Star Wars with those things. And during Amy Hennig's presentations on her Uncharted Star Wars title when it was being developed, before it was cancelled, EA executives would say, FIFA Ultimate Team makes $1 billion a year. Where is your version of that? I think EA have a major problem. Just to quickly step out and take a look at that. The people who like FIFA Ultimate Team, they're in the FIFA Ultimate Team. You're not going to be able to mix those fans up with the people who want Star Wars Uncharted or Star Wars games that are single player. It seems to be that EA are trying to treat the gaming market as one big market that's happy to do the same thing. It's not. That's why Battlefront had huge backlash to it. You need to I can't believe I'm having to explain this to such a big company. Diversification is not bad. You can't conflate the people willing to spend thousands on FIFA Ultimate Team with those that want a single player Star Wars game, but one is not superior to the other when it comes to whether or not you need to make them games for those people, because diversifying, making several different titles, is a good idea. A lot of financial analysis at the moment is suggesting that EA is in trouble because FIFA Ultimate Team is plateauing. They're not making more and more money, and analysts expect a huge drop-off. And that's not even anything to do with the decisions about loot boxes. It might just be people's reactions to it. They've decided that enough is enough. So my advice to EA is stop conflating different markets. It's silly. Moving on, Disney made a mistake when they shut down LucasArts. LucasArts used to be the nexus point for making lots of different games, but they'd work with different developers to make them. And as you can tell, looking at the 4-year period that we've had for EA, terrible, like 3 games. Look at 4-year period at the beginning and the mid-2000s, just a plethora of games. So clearly Disney made a huge mistake when they shut down LucasArts, but that's from a money-making point of view, that's from a game-making point of view. It's not necessarily from Disney's point of view. Because in the past, they've shut down their own game-making wing of their company because they couldn't make it work. So to them, they're not even considering that money. To them, they just can't get it, so we don't care. But they did make a mistake when they shut down LucasArts. Even just releasing it to function by itself, but them making a share of the profits would have been better for them. But, you know, I don't claim to understand the decisions that some companies make with regards to video games, but I think that's because they don't make any sense anyway. There is a Respawn game coming that looks quite interesting, and hopefully that does arrive and is good, but there's no guarantee of that from the looks of what EA are doing. And even if it does arrive and is good, that's one game out of 4. The other 3 are rubbish, loot box, mechanic driven Maniac games. Maniac's not a company, by the way, it's just whoever devised them is a maniac. I think that this deal with EA has to be shut down anyway, even if that Respawn game is good. 25% hit rate when all you did was make 4 is just not good enough. It's unlikely, though, to be shut down because neither of the 2 parties involved actually care about the situation at hand. As I said, Disney stopped making games. To them, that's money that's just bonus money, no matter who makes the game or how little they get. Although they should be furious, especially with the backlash, because I do believe, honestly, that I have refused to see any of the Star Wars movies in the cinema since I think it was Battlefront 2. I just said, no, I'm done with this. I didn't even play it. all the backlash, the money grabbing nature of it, I just refused to do it. You want my money, Disney? You're going to earn it. You're going to take that back off of EA and you're going to pay respect to the fans, or you're not getting my money. Done. But as I said, they don't care about gaming money. But it will. I do believe it will affect the rest of the Star Wars franchise that they do make money from. And EA don't care about their players. They don't care about the type of game that players want to play. They just want to make their loot box driven mechanic game and just try and sap even more money. But the problem they've got is that, as I just said, the gaming market is not just one big plethora of people that if there is nothing else to play, they'll just play loot box driven games until they shoot themselves in the face. They'll just stop playing the EA games. So that's why EA are having such a big trouble at the minute. Lots of financial analysts are saying don't buy at the moment. EA stock, that is. And it's... EA are driving themselves, they're making themselves into this sort of like one-trick pony, and the trick is just not very nice, because the trick itself is actually to trick people. And that's not very good. It's not going to work long term, but you know, they're free to make their own mistakes, and then when they die and all the little studios get released again, we'll get good games. To round off, apparently the EA executives are unhappy with the Star Wars deal because they want to focus on the IP that EA actually own, such as Anthem, instead of IP that Disney own. I have to continue with what Mr. Witt has said. What are EA doing? Why have they got so many different people making decisions? Some executives hate the deal and that's why they're not making good games and can't be bothered with it. But other executives paid so much money to get the deal. An exclusive Star Wars gaming deal for 10 years would have cost an arm and a leg. How is this company so mismanaged that they've got that approach? They don't know how to make games. They're run by people that are just interested in the business aspect, and you need those people there. But you need those people there who have a respect for the game making process. They might not be able to do it themselves, but they can work with the developers to make something so that it's amazing for gamers but is financially viable. I understand there are financial limitations to making great games, but by God, this company is going mental. The fact that they've split themselves up to the people who want Star Wars are not the ones who apparently are making the games or in charge of making the games, and the people in charge of making the games are looking at it from a money point of view, not a game point of view. And the people looking at it from a money point of view spent all that money on Star Wars without knowing that the people making the games didn't, or the people making the games I'm sure want to make Star Wars games, but people in charge of making the games and people in charge of buying the rights don't seem to be interacting at all. So they've said, look, we've got this great IP, or we've got access to this great franchise, make some games. Those people are like, no, I don't want to. I'm only interested in money, so we're going to make loot box games with Star Wars skins. There you go. In conclusion, EA, get your finger out, and Disney, get the contract out of EA. So now we do have the Bethesda story. Bethesda have been getting ripped to pieces by gamers on both social media and in their games, as people have been making mods which make fun of all the huge blunders that Bethesda have been making with regards to Fallout 76, including Nuka Dark Cola Rum and canvas bags, and replacing NPCs with books and talking mannequins. So the NPCs part is there's no NPCs in Fallout 76, so they've put mods into Fallout 4 and Skyrim which remove all the NPCs, or at least they've been joking about doing that. Recently, Bethesda have started selling a Fallout 76 leather jacket for $276. There'll be a picture of that. Now, that may seem to be enough for gamers to rip the living poop, as I've put, out of Bethesda, but it gets even worse. The leather jacket looks like this. So there's the picture. And comes with a nylon bag. Really tone deaf, some of these people. It's almost as if the people receiving all the righteous fury for what they did with the canvas bag are not the people designing. There's no lessons being learned here. A small example of the social media response is that someone on Twitter posted underneath the official Twitter post for the jacket, made from real at Bethesda Studios leather, and underneath is a picture of blue tarpaulin. If I can get that picture, it will be here. Then loads of people underneath saying that it had to be exchanged with nylon because they couldn't get the special leather. It got even worse when people started posting pictures of plastic bags with 76 written on them in marker pen. Hopefully I'll get a picture of that as well for you. With one user writing, "Hey man, can I just get the 500 caps and save us both the hassle?" Now what he meant was atoms, that was clarified later, and that's in reference to when they changed the canvas bag to nylon, they tried to pay people off with 500 caps. So he's referencing that particularly shady piece of business. So it turned out legally that could put people in a bit of a sticky wicket if they accepted those that fake Bethesda imaginary money. Bethesda have attempted to delete the post once, but it seems to have reappeared. Some suggestion that was for technical reasons, like links weren't put in it properly, but others have suggested it's because they couldn't take the ribbon, and that might actually be true, because they got ripped to pieces for this. But what is really sad about this story, to conclude it, is that Bethesda are seriously trying to sell this jacket as a serious piece of merchandise. I don't need to say anything else. Just look at that picture. I'm going to wait. Story over. You get the point. Now we're moving on to Bioware's Anthem. Now that recently had its VIP demo with an upcoming open demo coming along. Now I'm going to state some facts at the beginning here. Bethesda on the brain. She might have a point. Bioware's Anthem demo is a demo. It's not a... Now I say beta, so I can't annoy anybody or I'm annoying everyone. What that means that this form of game had to be specially prepared starting long before the actual release of the demo, because a beta is just, here, play the game, this is its current state, then we take it down and we go away and fix what you've come up with. A demo, on the other hand, splits away during development to be specially made, because it's not the whole world. It's just a tiny little part of it, specially formulated so that you can get the experience of playing the game. A good example is Resident Evil sort of reworked how the building works a little bit. The Resident Evil 2 demo is slightly different from the main game. There's items in different places, and the route you take is slightly different, I believe. I think it's because keys are in different places, so doors open different. I'm not entirely sure, but I know for a fact items were moved around, so your movement through the building is slightly different. And that's the same here, because it's basically a tiny game on its own. It's split off from development. It's like a screenshot. I've written it down here. The result is like a split timeline or a snapshot of the game some time ago, like a screenshot, as it were, of its development months ago. Therefore, things will have been changed or fixed in the actual game in the time between the split-off point. A small list of these things was provided on Twitter by Bioware developer. Now, as a warning, because we will be talking about loot boxes, microtransactions, one of the things mentioned is that the world economy has been rebalanced. Just remember that. So now we'll get into the actual story. Actually, no, I'll quickly explain. The third option for them is to release a trial, which is the full, complete, ready-to-go game, and you play it, but you're limited by time. You get a free trial, but you can play as much of the game as you can, go anywhere and do anything that you want that the game allows you to, but you're limited to only playing the game for an hour or two before it shuts down and you have to buy it, but you can keep your progress. That's the third option. They're all used for different reasons. So now we can talk about the actual demo. It's been a disaster. I think they lost an entire day because of bugs that we'll talk about, and the demo's only 3 days open for the VIP access. And they didn't open it an extra day longer. They shut it down on the deadline, but people couldn't really play it for the first day, so it was a disaster. Anthem itself seems to have an interesting setting. People have reported enjoying the flight and combat, and it looks great. It has good music. Now to the bad news. The demo itself was buggy as all hell. I saw some video footage, people just beeping and bopping and appearing randomly. Sort of like if you sprinted through a room with a strobe light on, but you take the strobe light away and you're just watching someone go beep, 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 beep through the room. It was insane. The enemies disappearing, coming back from the dead. It's like the Resident Evil 2's demo. But it wasn't deliberate. The Resident Evil 2 demo, actually, just to clarify that point, looked fantastic. Well done to them. It has loading problems, meaning that people struggled to get into play. Infinite loading bug. You couldn't register properly to get in to actually play the VIP demo. It was a nightmare for people. When you could get on, it was glitchy, buggy, and laggy. EA has stated that it was because they hadn't, or this could be Bioware, but it's really the same thing, has stated that it could be because, that it was because they hadn't expected the sheer numbers of people trying to play. Now, this is an utterly ridiculous statement. Now, while it's a VIP demo, and while people could invite friends, a limited number, the people who had access were people who paid for access. They paid for specific access to the demo, or they paid the pre-order, so they're given access, or they had EA Origins. They were given, so BioWare, EA, roughly knew the maximum numbers of people that could appear. They should have been set up to deal with the maximum number. They shouldn't have been surprised that one of the most anticipated, talked about games had a lot of people interested in it. That's insanity. Again, EA, get your act together. What are you doing? It's clearly just... I don't believe they undervalued that. I think that the system just didn't work. The demo is opening up in a few days. That's the open demo for everyone to play. It's on the 1st of February to the 3rd of February. You can download it before that opens up. I would recommend that because it's going to be a reasonably big demo. I don't know what your download times are like. You probably want to have it prepared if you're going to try it. I think this open one is probably so they can test it with even larger numbers. But that then brings me to the point itself, is that the open demo is in a couple of days. The actual release is a few weeks after that. How is this game going to work if it couldn't handle the highly restricted VIP demo that came? I don't see how this is working very well. But if this functions like a beta and for the online parts of it, the servers, which are going to probably be the same anyway, then it worked. But it has been a disaster so far. It's not a great start by EA and by BioWare, and it does leave me worried because, as I said, it's very common now for a lot of games to be released just not functioning properly. Activision, EA are particularly bad for this, in my opinion. Online games can be difficult. For me, this excuse is not acceptable anymore. It's 2019. This problem should have been fixed. But I think the biggest example is in 2013 with the release of GTA 5 Online. That demonstrated how badly things could go. Every company should have been aware of the problems and working. If you're making a game like that, that's a massive focus. Clearly, it hasn't got through to certain companies. Demos, the Resident Evil 2 demo, these demos come out roughly similar times. I've said it before. That looked brilliant and worked brilliantly. I've not heard massive problems with Resident Evil 2's remake, so there's no excuse at all for why this sort of stuff should have happened. They should have been testing those servers. I understand there are problems, but an entire day lost of a VIP demo. Surely then, if this is a demo, you should have beta tested the servers before. Anyway, there's a bit of a happy note to end on. As I said, we'll be talking about microtransactions. Here we are. BioWare have stated that there will be no loot boxes, that they have no place in the game. I have to give a shout out to what rank will I give him? Because he's a puny rank on Halo 5. I will go with Lieutenant Hills. He had faith that there wouldn't be loot boxes, and he's had his faith rewarded, restored, returned. And I'm going to doff of the cap there. He got that right. I was sceptical. I didn't believe that, but they're not there. However, We haven't heard anything about microtransactions. There probably will be microtransactions. You'll know what you're buying, but it's not a random loot box. And we don't know if they've put in egregious microtransactions similar to the Fallout 76 Atom shop. So they could have spurned his good faith on that count. We'll have to wait and see. I'm not going to make too many judgments about the microtransactions until I've seen the in-game economy. I also don't know how to make judgments of the actual rewards for playing the game until I've seen it, because it could become a grind fest. But I will say well done to the loot boxes, because I want them gone. So I'm glad to see that. So we're moving on now. Last year, a number of times we spoke of the sales figures for certain games, how they were in trouble. And we usually do that for games that I don't like, or companies games when I don't like the company. But we have the US sales figures now, at least one set of them, for 2018. Where we previously had to work on some UK physical sales numbers. These are physical, but they also include quite a lot of downloads. I think they include all the downloads for most formats, actually. I think it's just something like, I think EA Origins is, maybe that is included. I think maybe Epic Games have something that you can download on, that's not maybe counted, but most of the rest are. So no surprises, but it is gratifying to hear and see that Red Dead Redemption 2 was the best-selling game of 2018. Only 2 months of 2018 were left when it was released, and it still managed to sell what must have been at least 20 million copies, so I'm really glad to hear that. I heard that they made 750 million from 3 days of sales, so I'm really glad to hear that. We'll quickly go through the list now. Call of Duty Black Ops 4 was second. Activision are really not happy about that, but what do you expect? You took out the single player game, made some sort of clone mix of Fortnite and PUBG, and nobody wanted to play it. What a surprise. I mean, they did sell 500 million in 3 days, but they wanted 6 billion in 3 seconds, so they're never going to get that because your game's nowhere near good enough. NBA 2K19 was third. Madden NFL 19 was fourth. I've put in here, I hate EA. I'm not entirely sure if I think Activision's one of them and EA is the other, I'm not sure. But those are going to be microtransaction, loot-based filled mayhem similar to FIFA Ultimate Team, so I hate them. I hope they don't do well ever again, but they probably will. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate was fifth. I'm happy to report, even though it was released in December, I'm really happy about that, because that game looks like a real fan service game, and I'm really happy to see it do well in such a short space of time. Marvel Spider-Man was 6th, deservedly so, really good ratings. Far Cry 5 was 7th, I'm not entirely sure about that. I've heard good and bad things about it. It was a series high. Maybe they'll get punished because I did hear negative things about the repetitiveness. 8th was God of War. It's a shame it wasn't higher, but I'm really glad to see it there because it's, again, really good ratings. Monster Hunter World came in 9th, that's Capcom's highest selling game. Really happy to hear that because a lot of people say good things about that game too. They sold 10 million copies. And Assassin's Creed Odyssey rounded off 10. I am happy to see a single player game of that size and content and aspiration, especially an Assassin's Creed game, that aspiration do so well. I'm really happy about that. Just to add in a little side note here, GTA 5 was 11th, which is incredible because it came out in 2013. So that's just amazing. FIFA 19, this is to round off the ones I'm going to laugh at. FIFA 19 was 13th, Battlefield 5 was 14th, and Fallout 76, wait for it, drum roll. I don't seem to have a drum, hold on. Wasn't in the top 20. So these companies have been punished. Battlefield 5's been punished for declaring war on its fans. FIFA 19's been punished because people are just not interested in this loot box mechanic Ultimate Team as much as they used to be, thank goodness. Also, I think a few people got drawn away towards PES in the past couple of years. And Fallout 76 is being punished for being a buggy mess that's terrible, that has a terrible premise that nobody wants to play. Both Battlefield 5 and 76 were expected by expert analysts to be in the top 20, the top 10. I never thought they were, so I got that one right, haha, top experts. In 2016, actually not haha the experts, I'm just saying, I think your analysis was a little devoid of actual consumer relations there because these games did not set themselves up properly. They basically, it is our right that you will buy our game, do so immediately. That's never going to work. So I think that they need to work on their algorithms a bit to include that. I did get some numbers for 2016 and compared them. Battlefield 1 was second in 2016, NBA 2K17 was fourth, Madden NFL 17 was fifth, so they've held out okay. Battlefield has collapsed. FIFA 17 was ninth, so it's gone down. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare was first, so that's lost top space to Red Dead. GTA was sixth. I mean, that's still 3 years after it came out. That's incredible. It just shows you, if you've got a really good game, people will buy it. Activision, EA. Battlefield 5 was the first Battlefield to miss the top 10 this decade, and that includes Battlefield Hardline, which achieved it when it finished 10th. That game was not widely loved and has been considered and referred to by people as a Battlefield 4 reskin, so that is terrible that their game hasn't done it. This is just the consumer saying, stop it. Enough. Stop taking us for granted. It's an example of hate for EA affecting their sales. Yet again, Activision's been able to hide from that backlash more effectively, but in my personal opinion, I think that will be badly affected by the loss of Bungie with Destiny. I think they've been exposed by that, and the fact that they've been tampering with Blizzard and are going to do so more often and to a greater degree. You saw the response with Diablo Immortal. People are just not happy, and I think that EA and Bethesda have spent their goodwill. I think that Activision was able to hide itself. That's not happening anymore. They've been exposed. And I think that they're going to get some of this backlash next year as well. This year, sorry. It's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. The beta for Fallout 76, to try and explain why they're not in the top 20, it didn't work properly, and it demonstrated the game didn't work properly. It was buggy as all hell. It seems that primarily the issue was that Bethesda were making a game that their players just didn't want to play. Some people played the beta and thought, no, I'm not playing this. But others played it and thought, this will be interesting when they put in story, when they put in stuff to do. A bit like Sea of Thieves. That content's not there. It never arrived. It was never going to be there. And I think that people noticed that. They knew that was coming, and so some people turned off because it was a buggy mess, but I think more people just had no interest in the game because the premise is just nothing. It's inherently flawed. At the very least, it needed a lot more time to be developed, so it wasn't a buggy mess. But even then, I don't think it's doing that much better. It's not in the top 10, even if it's not a buggy mess, because it's just not any good. And after release, the news got out really quickly that it was a mess, and people didn't want to go anywhere near it. I think some things like Andromeda, which was a buggy mess at beta, and that was never fixed properly, have shown people, if it's a buggy mess at beta, just wait. And so just nobody wanted to play it, and they waited, and they heard bad things, so didn't touch it. It was a buggy rush job. It couldn't work because of fundamental design decisions like no NPCs or proper story, and that in turn suppressed further sales. That's why they're out of the top 20. Fallout 76 for me is just unsalvageable. And there's a little side story there about that. Reports have been coming in that Australia EB Games, or EB Games Australia, they basically they sell games. A shop. Have received a distributor recall for Fallout 76, meaning that the base version of the game has been removed from their shops. Extra special versions are still available, and so are pre-owned versions that are currently being sold as part of a buy one get one free scheme. I cannot verify that the shop has had to return for whatever reason, but they are not currently selling new copies of it. So that indicates there's been an issue. EB Games in New Zealand are still selling the game, so it could just be something specific to do with Australia, but there's also other parts to this. The reports have shown that there's a reduced number of games available for purchase on Amazon. Now I double checked this, and I found Amazon in the UK had 21 new copies, and in the US I couldn't find it being sold singularly. This is Xbox One numbers. Now that's a tiny number for such a huge seller as Amazon. Gamer's still selling it as well, but I can't tell how many copies they've got. The prices at present are $27 in Amazon, $25 on Game. Now, I'm not advertising the Fallout 76 here by telling you that. If I'm going to advertise it, I'll say don't buy it. It's a buggy mess that is not going to be any fun anyway. But what I'm trying to point out is that this game has been heavily cut in price only a few months after it came out, and there's very few copies available, but it didn't sell well. That leads to the question, are Bethesda planning to go free to play, or is this unique set of circumstances to EB Games Australia? I don't think it's unique if Amazon and Game are affected as well when it comes to them quickly trying to sell it. Why are EB Games Australia trying to sell 2 for 1? Who goes in needing 2 copies of a game? They're trying to get rid of copies that they will not be able to sell in short order for whatever reason, though it might be something that's non-Fallout specific, but why is this happening only with Fallout? This all suggests that while there's a possibility this is just a random occurrence, there is I think the stronger possibility that Bethesda are about to make Fallout 76 free to play. Now that's bad for a whole number of reasons. One, if it goes free to play, Bethesda then have an excuse to start adding in loot boxes and start increasing the prices even further on their Atom shop, which are already ludicrous, because it was supposed to be a $60, £60 game when you bought it. If they're cutting that price, that gives them something of an argument towards adding in the loot boxes they said they would never add. Also, what happens to those that have already paid for the game? What does Bethesda do with them? In Elder Scrolls Online and Star Wars The Old Republic, there were differences. For example, Elder Scrolls Online, you still have to purchase the game. You still have to purchase the extra packs. So it's free to play the game, but you still have to buy it. So basically like Fallout 76 is at the moment, although it's a better game to play. Star Wars The Old Republic, they gave you a free, you had to pay to be a subscriber. And you get extra content if you're a subscriber. The game is just better and easier to play if you're a subscriber. And when it comes to the initial layout, they gave you so many months of free premium subscription if you bought the game. Because I did, and that's what I got. And so they've actually found a way of making their game more adaptable, and it fits better. They made it free to play, and it's doing reasonably well. And I'm a big supporter of the Old Republic, because I have had that bug in the past, but that caused me to be unable to finish the game, and I was bored playing it by myself. But if we're going to be doing this channel, I would really like to revisit it with a crew of 4 people and play through some of the stories. And when I had that bug, it was a bug which stopped you being able to kill the Emperor because your powers stopped working and he just one-hit kill you. But I think what's really important there is that that bug, I had read about it before, but it had been fixed a year or 2 before I had it. And at the time of that bug, I had major internet trouble, physical internet trouble. We had to move provider because of it. I'm wondering if that laggy bugged connection might be why I was having unique problems, because I've never heard that reported by anybody after about a year before it happened to me. So that might have been why. I've sort of had a rethink on it, and the actual game itself was interesting. Loads of different planets to explore, loads of different storylines to play through. It's definitely got content, and I really enjoyed what I did up until that point. So they found a way around that issue. If people have already paid money, yeah, well, we're going to reward them for it. What are Bethesda going to do? They're probably just going to give you, either say, tough, you bought the game already, deal with it, or give you some more imaginary Atom Shop Bethesda money. And frankly, if you compare what you get in ESO and the old Star Wars The Old Republic, ESO is the Elder Scrolls Online, you're going to get way more out of what they gave you than the rubbishy fake money Atom Shop that Bethesda have set up for Fallout 76. So it's really struggle as to what they're going to do to fix that problem. And it's obviously, it's going to further suppress the sales that we were talking of before if they make the game free to play. I think this is the last story I've got come up here yet, is apparently Bioware have attempted to make, more than once, to make KOTOR 3, but EA keeps stopping them from making it. There's a part of me that says, why are you stopping that? But there's another part of me saying, well, right now with modern Bioware, I don't trust them. They're not the same company that made the original Mass Effects, the Dragon Age Origins, the original KOTOR games. Can we trust them? But if Anthem really works, I think we can. I'm waiting to see. But so I've got also a part of me that's a bit like, well, okay, I'm glad it's not happening yet. But what I don't understand is why they don't re-release the original KOTOR games with a remaster and maybe a little extra content for them. You could remaster them, add in quite a lot of content. There's remasters coming out left, right and centre. You could do a lot of business with that and allow those other people who were making the mod on PC to finish it. You could really do this well, and I don't understand why they've stopped it. Even the original games were Xbox Classic games, so they don't have achievements or trophies, and they're never on PlayStation. You open it up to PlayStation players who never got a chance to play it. And you could add in some modern achievements. I'm playing Halo Combat Evolved on Halo Master Chief Collection. It adds achievements to a classic Xbox game that never had them, and it really works. I've played missions in certain ways that I never thought I would, just to try getting these achievements, and I've really enjoyed it. There's some achievements in there for co-op, single player. It really, really works. So there's so many things they could do here for such a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of money. That's the point. A Star Wars game will sell loads of copies simply by the virtue of being a Star Wars game. And people will buy KOTOR in droves because it's KOTOR. EA would make an awful lot from this with a tiny amount of development cost. And yet they still won't do it. And this is why. I think this links back to the previous story. They are fixated on microtransactions and loot boxes. And from their point of view, and I agree with this, where would you put the microtransactions? Where would you put the loot boxes? Have loot boxes and microtransactions for equipment in-game? They'd have to add extra equipment. They'd have to make the enemies harder. They'd have to manipulate the core of the game and then have it just be for clothing or for weapons. And frankly, I don't think you'd need to do that. You would not need to buy those. People could play that game quite happily without any microtransactions. In fact, putting in microtransactions might cause people to not buy the game. So, while it's a stupid decision for me, and it's because KOTOR was designed as an old school RPG, there's no room for microtransactions in it. And there isn't really any way you could add microtransactions. With the exception of something like weapons and crystals for your lightsaber, or mods, for your items, or clothing armor. You wouldn't really need to actually buy any of that. There's no real way for them to do it. They're fixated on the games as a service, microtransactions and loot boxes, and for them, they're missing out on billions of revenue here by not doing it, but for them they don't care, because they're interested in microtransactions. That's the way they've set up their company. They clearly have not set up their company to diversify, and I think if they do lose loot boxes, which they will, I hope they do, if they don't, I'll pick up the banner and make sure they eventually do, that these are made illegal or banned in some way, or just the industry says, no, we're not doing that anymore. They are going to financially struggle because their games aren't actually that good, and they rely on the microtransaction and loot boxes. I think a real big point of it is Battlefront 2 wasn't actually that bad a game. It's just that single player was ridiculously pathetic because it was just put in there to save some people, and the loot boxes and progression totally destroyed it. But I think for gaming would be improved by EA disappearing. Same with Activision, and I think that is a sort of bad thing because they own a lot of IPs that people care about, but they're doing nothing with them anyway. So at least if they go, another company might come in and buy those IPs off them, and then that would be good. But I think those companies have to go, because they've set themselves up to almost prey on their customers, and for me, that's unacceptable. Well, anyway, that's all the news for this week. Slightly shorter episode because we skipped the what have I been playing, because it's just me and I've not really been playing anything new, no new shiny stories for you. So I'm going to say that I hope you enjoyed this. I enjoyed making it. That you can like and subscribe below, and feel free to leave a comment. You can also watch our previous videos. We've got quite a range now. All of them are ShadowCasts, but a lot of different topics are discussed and we have fun. We'll keep you apprised as we can about particularly the Gearbox Randy Pitchford accusations, because they're very, very, very serious, and we should be looking into that. Look, we're not investigative journalists, we can only report what others tell us, but we will do so because that's such a serious issue. And like I said, I hope you join us next week. You can follow us on Facebook at overshadow.shadowcast, and you can contact us through email at overshadow.shadowcast@gmail.com. Abigail should be back next week, when we hope to see you then. Bye bye.